I'm Christine, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my July mid-month reading wrap-up. Alright, so it's now the middle of July, and I'm so excited to talk about the 20 books I've read so far for the first half of the month. I always do my reading wrap-ups in two parts, so I do a mid-month wrap-up, which is the one you're getting today, and then I'll do a end-of-the-month reading wrap-up at the end of the month to talk about the books that I read for the last half of the month. So in today's video, I'm here to talk about the 20 that I've read so far for July. So excited to talk about a bunch of these. I've had a lot of 5-star reads so far for the month, and so I'm so excited to get into it. Of course, as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or full reviews on any of the books that I read, I always review every book that I read, and you can get to my Goodreads, which is linked in the description of the video. That's where I post all of my reviews. I will also have in the description of the video all of the links to all the books I talk about, so you can always find any book that I talk about in any video. They're always going to be linked in the description of the video with the author and the title of the book. So if you miss any and want to go back and see which books I was talking about, they're all linked below for you as well to go and grab for yourself. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into these 20 books. So I started off July with reading 2 books by Lucina Connie. So the first one is The Brightest Light of Sunshine. This is the first book in this kind of series of hers. This one I ended up giving 4 stars to. This one had been on my TBR for quite some time. I know my friend Tori from Novel Life, she loves this series and really enjoys this author's writing, these books. So I've been wanting to get to them for probably like over a year and finally decided to do it. It just like kind of gave me summer vibes based off of like the covers. So I will say this author, these books in particular, are very slow burn, which I am a fan of slow burn. So if you are as well, you might enjoy these. This one is like forbidden, age gap. I think actually both the books, the first 2 books in the series, are that. So if you like those kind of tropes, maybe hop into them. We also have a lot of like mental health rep in both, and the characters kind of like going through traumatic experiences or overcoming those. This book is Opposites Attract, where basically the heroine is a ballet teacher, and she at the start of the story wants to go get a tattoo. So she goes to a tattoo parlor, and that is where the hero works. He is a tattoo artist, and she talks to him, and she ends up actually not getting the tattoo then, but they kind of like see one another, and he also I think works with her cousin, I believe, and so he kind of knows about her and was like intrigued from there. This one's actually friends to lovers as well, because the hero and the heroine really hit it off and they become fast friends and they start spending a lot of time together. Like I mentioned, the romance part is slow burn, as well as not only with like their age gap that the hero's wary about, but he's also wary because he's trying to get custody of his younger sister who's 4 years old, and so he's kind of going through that and doesn't want anything to maybe disrupt his sister's life of somebody maybe coming into their lives and coming out of it. He really wants to make sure she's protected and taken care of. So that's his like #1 priority, which makes sense because of what his character's gone through in the story. Like I mentioned, it has mental health rep for both characters. So the heroine as well is going through her own kind of healing journey and is why she's taking relationships slowly, and things like that kind of unfold from there. This one I'm really glad I finally got to it, and I really enjoyed the story overall. There was just like a couple things that kept it from being a perfect read for me. I felt like at times it would feel like the story was wrapping up, and then all of a sudden like more things would happen. There was more pages to get through, and so it kind of felt like the pacing was possibly a little bit off. I feel like it could have been edited maybe a little bit more, but for what it was, I enjoyed it. 4 stars. All right, so then I jumped into the second book of the series, which is The Darkest Corner of the Heart by Lucina Connie again. This one is actually like years later, so this is following the, like I mentioned, the hero of the first book had a younger sister he was getting custody of or trying to get custody of. This is that little sister like all grown up now. So I think it's been like 17-ish years, 18 years maybe for this book. This is another one with slow burn, age gap, kind of like those forbidden type of aspects. There is mental health rep again. And here the heroine is a ballet dancer, and she basically at the start of the story ends up getting an injury, and so she has to go to a physical therapist, and that is where she meets the hero, who is her physical therapist for like 6 weeks. So that is like a little bit of the forbidden elements, but like it doesn't really go too deep into that, if that makes sense. This one, just the characters I didn't really get behind as much as the first book, so this one I actually gave 3 stars to. I just didn't really connect as much with the hero or the heroine in this one, and I just wasn't like super invested in their story. This one I will say leans more into that age gap situation of the hero being super hung up on that being an issue for him. He's 30, the heroine is 21 in the story, and for some reason he's just like super hung up, brings it up a ton throughout the book of their age gap, and that's kind of what keeping him from like taking her seriously or taking their relationship seriously. So that's kind of the crux of their issues, and I don't know, it was just okay for me. So 3 stars. I might eventually continue on to the 3rd book in the series, but I'm not like hurrying to get there, if that makes sense. Like they were good, but they're not like favorites for me. So 3 stars for that one. All right, the next book I read is Overruled by Lana Ferguson. This book actually just came out on July 1st. I did talk about this recently in a like recent new releases video where I was talking about if books were worth the hype or not. This one I feel like was not worth the hype. I gave this one 3 stars. This is actually my least favorite, I think, book that I've read from this author. So I've read her, what is this, like the 5th standalone romance that she's had so far. And this one, it was just okay for me. Basically in this one, they are rival divorce lawyers and they're kind of working on a lot of cases together, but on the opposing sides. And in here, at the start of the story, they're already like hooking up. So I feel like we didn't really get a lot of their chemistry connection because it's already like established when the story starts. So I felt like we just kind of missed a lot of that. So this one, 3 stars for me. I just wasn't super invested. So on to the next. All right, so you saw at the end of June how I was obsessed with reading Whitney My Love by Judith McNaught, and I wanted to jump into more old school historical romances. So I did continue on, and the beginning of July, I jumped into Moonruck Madness by Laurie McBain. This is a gorgeous cover. This book was originally published in 1977. This book actually has 2 different covers, and the book is also available on Kindle Unlimited, which I feel like is so cool. So definitely check that out if you want to check this one out. This book had been on my TBR for the longest time, and I had been wanting to get to it for forever. So I finally decided to just jump in, and I had the best time. I gave it 4.5 stars. So this one's really cool because, like I mentioned, it is available on Kindle Unlimited. And this book, even at the time that it was published in 1977, it was a big deal. There was a lot of conversation about it because there is like really good consent on page. And for the time of when romances were coming out, historical romances, that wasn't usually the case. So this one was like a big conversation, even at the time it was happening, because there's a lot of like consent on page, which was super fun to see in an old school historical romance. So this one I definitely want to continue on to the rest of the trilogy. I think the next book in the series follows the couple of this one, their daughter. So I'm very intrigued, and it involves pirates. So I'm excited. But this one, the heroine is actually a Scottish highwaywoman, which is why I wanted to get to this one, because we always read about the highwayman, but I wanted to read about a highwaywoman, and it was so much fun. So basically this starts off, and it was actually a little bit emotional. So the beginning, it drops you in to the Battle of Culloden, and the heroine is Scottish, like I mentioned, and her grandfather is the leader of their family's clan. And you see her watching as a young girl, her entire family getting slaughtered on the Culloden battlefields. So you see how her and her brother, sister, and her aunt ends up kind of whisking away them as children, and they escape from Culloden, from everything happening there, and they go to England. And so then we catch up to the heroine years later, and she's actually working as a highwaywoman to kind of make money for her family. She's helping out her aunt and her brother and sister. And so I loved in here kind of the reasons behind her doing that. And then she ends up meeting the hero, who is a dupe, and he's kind of intrigued by these cases of a highwayman because people assume it's a man who's kind of thieving and stealing from people in the night. And so one night he decides to trap the highwayman, thinking it's a man, and he traps the heroine, and then is like super intrigued even more because he's like, wait a minute, you're a woman and I kind of like you. And so it kind of goes from there. The first half of the story I definitely enjoyed more. The end, there is just like so much like plot and drama and action and adventure that just gets like thrown in. So there's like so many different tropes that this one ends up hitting in the last half of the book. But I feel like that's kind of common with old school historical romances. I just had a really good time with this one. 4.5 stars. I loved the hero and the heroine in this one, and how much he is just down bad for the heroine. And it's just like so good. And like I mentioned, the consent that happens was super good to see in an old school historical, as well as like even some of the steamy scenes. We don't get like super explicit details, but there are some like mentions, or you can like figure out what's happening on the page because of, you know, things happening. It's not closed door or anything. So I enjoyed this one. 4.5 stars. I'm excited that I finally read it, and then I can't wait to read more Laurie McBain. So that is Moonruck Madness. Like I mentioned, it is on Kindle Unlimited as well. All right, the next one is Forgotten Dreams by Natasha Madison. So I had an ALC of this one. It actually comes out, I think, July 18th. This one I ended up giving 3 stars to. This is the 5th and final book in her Dream series, which overall I really enjoy the series. It's more angsty emotional, and so I had really loved the first 3 books in the series in particular, but I've read all the books. It's a super solid series. This one was just probably my least favorite in the series. So this one's kind of less angsty emotional as far as like the couple's relationship. Basically in this one, it kind of centers around the heroine, who turns 25, and she finds some papers when she's going through her parents' garage when she's over one day, and she realizes that she was actually adopted, and she had no idea that her parents basically adopted her, found her on a fire station steps like 25 years ago. And so she decides, you know what, I want to kind of know more about that, like what happened, who found me, maybe who my birth family is. So she decides to move to the small town where like she was last kind of found. And when she goes there, that's when she meets the hero on day one, because he's gonna be the contractor like fixing up her house. And so they instantly hit it off, become friends super quickly. And I feel like their relationship is really settled, like 30-35% into the story. They are very happy. There's like no issues with their relationship. And then from there, it turns into this kind of like romantic suspense plot with kind of her adoption story. And so it kind of goes from there. And I just wanted like some more angst or emotions of how we got in the first like couple books in the series. So overall, I feel like it was okay, just not a favorite. So I think 3.5 stars I said on Goodreads. So 3.5 stars for that one. All right, so then I read Here and Now by Corinne Michaels. I was actually sent a copy of this from the publisher and the author. So I think it is actually really, really pretty. I love the green and I love the like wraparound with the sprayed edges on here and like the dripping moments. I think it's really stinking pretty, and especially the dark green. This one I sadly though gave 3 stars to, so I'll probably be unhauling this book at some point. This one is single mom, heroine on the run, small town, romantic suspense vibes. Basically in this one, the hero is a high school principal and he kind of gets roped in or voluntold that he's going to coach his nephew's hockey camp for the summer, because I believe the hero like almost became a pro hockey player back in the day, and so he kind of gets roped into that, and that is where he meets the heroine and her son, who is a part of the hockey camp as well. In this one, like I mentioned, the heroine and her son are on the run, so she's basically trying to hide out from, I think it's like her ex's business partner or something, who has like given her death threats, and kind of like she knows he's after her, and so she's kind of on the run from that. It goes from there. This one, like, it was okay overall. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars. I had actually forgotten that I did read the first book in the series, which was All Too Well. I read that one before they ended up becoming like published by a publisher, so I read that book when it was indie, and I think I also gave that one 3 stars. So I think this like series is just not for me. Corinne Michaels in general, I feel like is super hit and miss for me. So some of hers I've enjoyed in the past, but I feel like that's actually kind of rare, because most of hers I feel like they kind of center around story plot points that I don't really enjoy. So 3 stars for this one, but I'm glad that I got to it so that I know I don't need to keep it on my shelves. Next, I read Night Work by Nora Roberts. This one, I have been trying out Nora Roberts books and I feel like they're so hit and miss for me. I will love, love, love a book, and then I will not really jive with a book. And this one was the case of me not really jiving with it. So this one I gave 2 stars to. I was just like really bored with the story. Basically here we're following like a hero story, or he's like a thief, but we're following like the male main character's story. And so you see him become a thief when he's super young because his mom has cancer and he wants to be able to provide, pay the bills. At like 9 years old, I think he starts becoming a pickpocket. And you see how over the years he just continues to do that for different reasons, to maybe pay for his schooling, go on trips, adventures, pay for bills, all the things. And so he is just like a thief at night. And you basically just kind of follow his entire life, like the different states that he moves to and lives in, kind of the relationships and the friendships that he forms along the way. And I was just honestly kind of bored with this one. So I feel like to enjoy this book, you'd have to enjoy the main character, like his situation and story, and I didn't. So on to the next. This one was not for me. All right, next up is Wrangled Love by Anne Einerson. So this is a new July release as well. This one I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars. I feel like Anne Einerson just always hits on the tropes that she promises on. So this one is her first, I think, cowboy romance. This is basically a small town cowboy where the hero grew up on a Montana ranch with like a kind of found family situation, and he has since moved on and he is a CEO in New York, when he ends up getting a call one day that he has a son that he never knew existed. So him and the mother of his son had a one-night stand years ago, and she has recently passed away, and so that's when he gets called to come and get his son and take care of him. And so he immediately wants to be the like greatest dad for his son, immediately jumps in and wants to make sure he has the best life for him. So he takes his son and is like, I can't raise him in New York. Let me go back to the place that I always felt like I was at home, which is the Montana ranch that he grew up on. So it's kind of like CEO turned cowboy. So he goes back to Montana with his son, who is actually non-speaking after his mother's passing. And so it has some like emotional elements there. And he ends up staying with the family who owns the ranch. So it is his best friend's younger sister. That's who the heroine is. It's a single dad nanny romance where him and his son end up living with her in one of the cabins on the ranch. And it goes from there. It was super sweet and fun, and I just felt like it was a fun, like very summery, small town cowboy romance. So liked this one, Single Dad Nanny, at 4 stars. All right, so I mentioned Judith McNaught earlier, and I'm just like absolutely obsessed with her books right now. So I decided to jump into the next book in the Westmoreland series. So this is Untel You. This is the original cover with the gorgeous like pearl and that gorgeous like shine on here. I'm obsessed. So I got this one actually recently at a used bookstore when we were on a road trip, and so I was so glad I had to grab this original cover, but I will put the like ebook cover up here while I'm talking about it. So this one I absolutely loved. So the Westmoreland series is basically starts off with a Kingdom of Dreams, which is medieval and kind of the start of this Westmoreland family. Then we have cut to like hundreds of years later in Regency setting with Whitney My Love was the second book in the series. And then the third book is Untel You. And so the heroes of Whitney My Love and Untel You are brothers. And so you've already seen the hero in this one in that book. So I feel like if you enjoy the characters in Whitney My Love, of Whitney and Clayton, the hero of that one, you see them a ton in this book, which I just kind of love, like those close-knit kind of family relationships, as well as in here, the hero, you've already seen him from the previous book as well. So this one was so much fun. I gave this 5 stars. I'm just obsessed with Judith McNaught right now and just want to binge all of her books, and I'm going to slowly but surely. So this one I loved. This is an amnesia romance where kind of a mistaken hidden identity as well, where the heroine in this one is an American and she's actually on a ship where she is a companion to somebody who's supposed to be coming to get married to a baron in England. So then we cut to the hero. He's an earl, and you see that one night he is on his way home and his carriage actually ends up running over a man who's drunk and kind of runs out in the middle of the street. So that's the baron, and he actually dies. And so the hero feels horrible and he immediately goes to the man's house and wants to find out like, who can I apologize to? Where's his family? I want to let them know what happened. So he kind of finds out from the butler there that that guy had like no family, but he does have a fiance on her way from America that is supposed to be arriving the next day. And so the hero is like, well, I'll go find her at the ship harbor and apologize to her. So when he gets there, he sees Sheridan, who is the companion of the fiance of the dead baron, if that makes sense. And so he sees Sheridan come off the ship alone because actually her charge, who she was in charge of, who was supposed to come and get married to the baron, ended up taking off at the previous port and like fleeing to go elope. And so she's like, oh my God, I have to like tell this baron guy now that his like wife bride-to-be is missing. And so at the same time, the hero is like, oh my God, I have to tell this woman that the baron that she's supposed to marry is dead. And so there's like this miscommunication where basically he is in the middle of trying to tell her what happened. And she's trying to tell him like, I'm not the one you should be apologizing to. I'm actually her companion. But at that time, before she can tell him that, she ends up getting hit in the head with something like at the harbor, like a wood pole or something. And so she wakes up and remembers nothing. She doesn't know her name. She doesn't know what she looks like. She doesn't even know why she's in England, what's going on. And so it's kind of the mistaken identity situation with amnesia. If you can't tell, I was so obsessed. I love old school historical romances just for their like over the top drama and antics and adventure. And this one was definitely that. I feel like this book was just so much fun and I really enjoyed the characters in this one. It's kind of like all centered around this mistaken identity, miscommunication. So it's like no wonder that the book has kind of miscommunication towards the end of the story as well. But I feel like it makes sense because the entire book is based off of a miscommunication. I love this one. I just really feel like this author's books works for me, which I know her books are like hit and miss for people, but I feel like for me, they really work. I love old school historicals and I love that kind of like levels of angst and drama and just like characters who have flaws and feel very real. I enjoy them so much. This one, like I said, 5 stars. I was actually reading reviews after I wrote my own review for this one and looked up other people's reviews, and a lot of people were like complaining about the hero in this one. I feel like a lot of people complain about Judith McNaught's heroes of like that they're not maybe declaring their love or saying the actual words, but I feel like these heroes work for me really well because they don't maybe say the words directly like I love you. I mean, I feel like they do, some of them, but they don't always say it. Like they will show it in their actions and other words. Like they will have these huge declarations of all these amazing things they'll say to the heroine, how they want to take care of her and protect her and keep her safe, and have all these like elaborate speeches. And so like I don't really get hung up on the fact that he doesn't actually say I love you because he's showing it in his actions. And so I feel like that kind of comes into play with how people, their like love languages of how they, you know, accept or want love. So I feel like that has to do with maybe like why some people don't enjoy the heroes in this one, but I don't know. Judith McNaught really works for me. I could go into a whole video just like talking and gushing about her books because I love them so much. So yeah, 5 stars for this one. I enjoyed it. All right, so then after that, I jumped into Miracles, which is a novella part of the Westmoreland series as well by Judith McNaught. This one is a super short novella, and I was so sad it was actually a novella. I gave this one 3 stars because of the fact that I feel like this one really needed a lot more time. I don't know if Judith and novellas should go hand in hand. She needs like a lot more word count, I feel like, and especially with the hero in this one. So he is the hero Nicky, and he has made appearances in Untel You as well as Whitney My Love. And so he's a huge character that I feel like should have gotten a full-length book. And so I feel like he kind of didn't come out of this one very great. This is like a 70-ish, 75-page novella, and I feel like it just needed a lot more time and energy. Basically in here, the heroine of this one, she was somebody that the heroine of Untel You started looking after for a little bit in the end of that book. And so she is basically 18 and she's at a masquerade ball. Her mother is trying to set her up with a ton of different people and she decides that she wants to ruin herself. So she goes to the hero and asks him to ruin her. And there's like a mistaken situation again. There is a compromise situation that leads them into having to get married. And so he kind of assumes that she tricked him into it. So literally on their wedding day, he takes off and doesn't see her for like a few months. And then he has to come back because his own mother is like, hey, I am like sick and I want you and your wife to like have children and be happy. And so they have to like pose as this happily married couple in front of his family. And of course they realize that there's actually feelings there and that the whole thing was a miscommunication. So this one, I feel like it just needed a lot more page count, especially for this hero who is featured so much in this series. I feel like he needed more. So 3 stars for that one. It was fine. All right, so then I jump back into some arcs and ALCs that I had to get to. So the first one is Eclipse Empire by Tessa Hale. This is book 2 in her Wolves of Crescent Creek series. This book I gave 5 stars to. I love this series overall. This is a second book in a trilogy that is a continued story. So basically book 1 left off on a cliffhanger and you need to read them in order because you're following the same characters in the whole trilogy. So this one I loved. It basically starts off right where book 1 left us off on a cliffhanger and then it goes from there and I love it. So this is Wolf Shifters, Why Choose, Paranormal, Fated Mates, very much like Touch Her and Die vibes, Protective Heroes. What I loved in here is you get to see more of the relationships kind of developing with Ren, the heroine, who is half wolf shifter, half caster, who's kind of been in hiding all of her life because of reasons that kind of the plot centers around. And so I love this one. You get to see more of maybe the reluctant heroes who are finally coming around to her being their fated mate, and you get to see more of those like relationships developing, as well as like a little tease of some group activities, which was super fun. So I love these. If you can do them on audio, highly recommend because the audiobooks are a full cast narration. So good. This author always hits her audiobooks out of the park. Why Choose, Paranormal, Wolf Shifters, which is one of my favorites to read. I love this one. 5 stars. It actually just came out. Then the next book I jumped into, I had an ALC of this one. It actually comes out on July 22nd, so next week. This is Chasing Shelter by Catherine Cowles. I love this one and gave it 5 stars. This is book 5 in her Sparrow Falls series. So this is a small town romantic suspense series. This one is a Neighbors to Lovers where the hero is a grumpy single dad and the heroine moves in next door to him and he already knows her because his sister and the heroine's brother are together. They're like a couple. So the heroine, some of her like backstory plot was already like developed in the previous book in the series, which was her brother's book. And so we already kind of know her in the series. So this was just super cute and fun. I love in here the hero, he's a grumpy single dad, he's the sheriff in town, and the heroine is his neighbor. And I loved her relationship with his daughter, and of course the hero with his daughter, and the hero with the heroine. It was just so good. I feel like this series is just like so comforting to come back to this small town and this found family who you feel like you just know because the whole series has been following this one family. And I just love being back in this series. So love this one so much. It's out on July 22nd. Highly recommend. I gave it 5 stars. The whole series is so good. Next, I reread Marian Winterborn by Lisa Kleypas. So this is the gorgeous cover for this one with the bride Helen. And then we have this beautiful step back moment as well with Reese Winterborn. I'm currently a co-host for a Ravenel's read along. And so this is book 2 and this was our July book to read. The whole series is a reread for me and I just love them to pieces. So this one I gave 5 stars originally and I gave it 5 stars again. I love this book. This book, I feel like it is a continuation from Cold Hearted Break. So you see Helen and Reese, the couple of this one, you see their story already kind of start up their romance situation in book 1. So I feel like it's definitely needed to have that backstory before jumping into this book with them. And this is just a continuation of their story. So in here, Helen is kind of more shy or keeps to herself. And the hero in here is a self-made man who really wants her. He wants to spoil her, lavish her, and just like have her in his life. And I just love their relationship so much. And here the heroine has some things that she's kind of working through in the background that she's kind of keeping a secret. So I just love how the whole book kind of comes together. So good. Like Lisa Kleypas and her self-made men heroes always work. Such a good one. 5 stars. I love this book to pieces. This whole series is so good. All right, so then I jumped into some novellas from Ruby Dixon in her Residiverse series. So the first one is When She's Ready. This is a novella, like I mentioned, and these are just like sci-fi alien romances, which I love. I love Ruby Dixon books so much. So the next 2 are 2 that I hadn't read in the series yet. And so this first one, this is a marriage of convenience where basically the heroine is human and she's on this farming planet. The hero is an alien and he basically is an ex-con who, to get amnesty on this new planet, he has to get married quickly. And so he ends up in this marriage of convenience with the heroine who needs protection for her farmlands. And it goes from there, and it's just super short and fun. Basically, the heroine is just like, oh, this is just going to be a marriage of convenience, a marriage on paper for you to protect my farm. And the hero is like, actually, now that I see you, this is going to be a real marriage. So this one was fun. I gave it 3 stars. I feel like it was just a fun, good time. Not like an all-time favorite in the series, but I liked it. 3 stars, which I didn't mention, but this one is on audio. So the audiobook's on like Hoopla. And if you get the audio for When She's Ready, at the end of it is also the audiobook for this next book I'm going to talk about, which is When She's Lonely. So it's kind of like an audiobook pairing. So there's 2 novellas in it. So the next one I read is When She's Lonely. And I think this is the last book in the Readathon series I had to get caught up on. This one I really loved and gave it 4 stars. This is another sci-fi alien romance on the same farming planet, which is where the whole series has taken place. This one also has a disability rep. So I loved in here how the heroine, she had like hearing aids back when she was on Earth, but she has lost her hearing aids since she has been kind of taken to all these different planets. So she is hard of hearing and doesn't let anybody know. So basically on the planet, she's very misunderstood and people think that she's either ignoring them, that she's too like snobby, not paying attention. They try to teach her things about how to take care of like her farming equipment, and then it goes wrong because she didn't hear them, but they assume she's just like not willing to learn, that she doesn't want to listen. And so people have this like huge misunderstanding about her. And I loved in here how the hero, he basically gets called out from like, he's like maintenance or something. She kind of sets her barn on fire because of some things gone wrong. And so he kind of starts to wonder and like follows and pays attention to her and realizes her secret that she actually can't hear very well. And so he decides, you know what, this is not going to work for me. Like we need to become friends and I'm going to help you out and help keep your secret. And so it's a friends to lovers and it's just so stinking good. I love this one. And actually at the end of it, in the author's note, the author Ruby Dixon, she talks about how she actually has hearing loss herself and has dealt with like kind of situations like that in her life. And so she wanted to write a character who kind of like, you know, own voices situation. So I loved that little like tidbit as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one at 4 stars for When She's Lonely. All right, and then the next 5 books, they're actually all part of the historical fiction readathon that I'm currently actually in the middle of co-hosting. So I am going to just quickly talk about these because I have a whole vlog coming out for all these books, all my reads, and like more like full thoughts on them, which will be coming out the like next Tuesday after the readathon is over. So I'm just gonna like quickly talk about these and give you my quick ratings. So the first one is The Second Mrs. Astor by Shayna Abe. This one I ended up giving 3/3.5 stars. This one is basically a kind of story about real people who were on Titanic, who lived during the Gilded Age in New York, where the heroine in here becomes the young bride. She's like 18 and pregnant when her and her husband, John Jacob Astor, board Titanic. Based on true facts, I guess, kind of story, but like fictionalized, where it is basically just her kind of like relationship with him and their courtship and their quick marriage and how that was like a huge deal at the time and a lot of scandal. He was recently divorced. He's from a like uber wealthy, like socialite type of family. They have a huge age gap because like I mentioned, she's 18 and he's 29 years older than her. And so it was a huge deal even back then. So basically they're returning home from a honeymoon and they get on Titanic in 1912. And we know how that story ended. But in this one, you kind of already know going in that the heroine that you're following, she actually survives and lives through that sinking. And so she's 18 and pregnant and she becomes widowed after the Titanic sinking. And it goes from there. This one, the book really only focuses on those 2 years of her life when she's kind of in the courtship, gets married to her husband. And so I kind of wanted more of after the fact, like after Titanic, after everything that happened with her, because she had a kind of a colorful life. So 3.5 stars. I feel like if you like kind of the Astor family history or if you like Titanic history, you'd enjoy it. But otherwise, not too sure. It is available on KU though, and I think the audio is available through libraries as well as with Audible Plus like membership thing. So check that out if you want to. Which I totally forgot to hold up the book the whole time I was talking about it, so I'll have to go back and insert the other thing, but you get it. Then the next one I read for the readathon is After Paris by Mary Ellen Taylor. This one I actually did not enjoy. I gave this one 2/2.5 stars. This is a newer historical fiction and it's available through KU with the read and listen feature. And I just didn't love this one. Basically, this is following a dual timeline. One of them is in present day, like 2025, and we're following a woman who recently had cancer. Is kind of trying to figure out her own family planning, and she is also researching the case of the heroine in the past, the story we follow of this like French cinema it girl in the 1940s who went missing during during World War II. So you kind of see both of those stories playing out in the dual timeline. I enjoyed the past more, but even that I wasn't like super sold on. So it was just like not really for me. So 2.5 stars. All right, then the next two I absolutely loved, gave them both 5 stars. So the first one is The Women on Platform 2 by Laura Anthony. This one is actually recommended to me and I got to it and I'm so glad I did because I loved this book. It was so good. One of my favorites of the year. So this book is very heavy with the content. Just know that going in. Definitely check content warnings. There's a lot of heavy content for this one, and this is basically based on a real life event that happened in the 1970s in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So in here you're following women who are basically trying to get women's rights and contraception to be legal in Dublin, and so things like that. Basically you're following these women who are fighting for women's rights and the rights to like legal and safe contraception, because it's actually illegal in Dublin at the time. And so it kind of goes from there, and you basically follow this one woman and her story, her friends, her life. She's in an abusive relationship, and you kind of see like other people of the times struggles with their families and things like that. And so it was just so good. I cried through like half of this book. It's amazing, so powerful, such a strong story, and I'm so glad I got to it. Based on true events. It's so good. Highly recommend. It's on a KU. Audiobook was available through Libby for me as well, so highly recommend. It was amazing. Like I mentioned, one of my favorites of the year. And then the next one is The Things We Cannot Say by Kelly Rimmer. This one I also gave 5 stars to, but I feel like it's not as glowing of a 5-star as the previous book, so it's still solid. I had like no issues with it, but that first book just hit so much more. So anyways, this book is a World War II historical fiction. We get dual timeline as well, because in here we're following a woman who is a busy mother, and she has a son with autism, and she also has a daughter who has a really high IQ. So she has a lot going on with both of her children. And so her grandmother is really ill. She's like in her 90s and she's in the hospital. She recently had a kind of brain injury where now she is unable to communicate with people. And so she actually is able to use a communication device that they use, like this app, this program that the like main character uses with her son with autism. And so they kind of use that, and they piece together that her grandmother wants the woman, like her granddaughter, to go back to Poland and find things out for her. And so she ends up doing that. And in the past, we're following this young girl and her family life in Nazi-occupied Poland during World War II, kind of like right before it, and of course during it. And it goes from there, and it's so good. This one was another one, like very tear-jerky towards the end. I really enjoyed this one. 5 stars. I'm so glad I finally got to this author. This is the first book I've read from her, and I definitely want to read more now. All right, then the last one I read to talk about today is The Flight Girls by Noelle Salazar. This one I ended up giving 3 stars to. So this one's actually been on my TBR for quite some time. I've read newer books from this author, and so I think this was her debut. And so going back to this one, I feel like I enjoy her writing more now versus like this older one. And I've just read like some really amazing historical fiction books like this week, as well as just in general. So this one really didn't live up to what I wanted. So basically in this one, we're following a female pilot during World War II. So she is training military pilots down in Oahu in Hawaii when Pearl Harbor happens and is attacked. And so it kind of goes from there. It's really quick. Like I thought more of the story would be a focus on that part, but it really wasn't. And so basically the war begins and she ends up getting shipped back home. And the guy that she was actually, because she has like a little situation, like friendship with somebody she meets there who is an army pilot, they hit it off and they decide to become friends. And so after that happens, he actually gets shipped off overseas to war. And so she is sent back home to Texas. And so from there, we catch up to her a couple years later and she joins the WASP program, which I thought we'd again get like more of that. But I feel like some of the like historical aspects of the story were just like really glossed over and they didn't really like go into depth. So that was kind of my issue with the story. I wanted more of that and maybe less of, because she has this like continued friendship, relationship, romance happening in the story. She has great like female friendships. And so those were all like really strong. And even for somebody who reads romance all the time, like, I don't know, with my historical fiction, I want more of like the history aspects. So I kind of wanted to like dig in deeper with some of that like happening. So overall, like it was fine. It just felt very like short and glossed over for me. So 3 stars for this one, but my current read is kind of delivering on all these things that I wanted in this book, but you'll be getting that update later. So that was The Flight Girls. All right, so those are all of the books that I read. Like I mentioned, those last 5, I'll talk about them even more in my historical fiction readathon vlog that will be coming next Tuesday. So definitely stay tuned for that. And let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books that I talked about, if you are going to pick up any of the books that I've read so far this month, if you had any amazing reads yourself so far for July. I would love to know. Definitely leave them in the comments. Like I mentioned, all the books, their titles, their authors are all going to be linked below. So if you want to go check out the books, if you want to check out my reviews for them, everything is going to be linked below for you. And if you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a lobster, because this super cute summery Lila Junko shirt, which actually just launched today, you can go shop and use my code Christy10 to save. This lobster is just like the stinking cutest. So definitely leave me a lobster in the comments. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!